looking at tank mixes and sequences. So we've received quite a few questions on this, and thank you to William Hornt and Gavin Burrow on what you asking about what you can and cannot mix, particularly fungicides and PGRs. So Dan, do you want to give us some advice on this?
Yeah, again, this is quite a commonly occurring question that we get every year, sort of starting from about now, really. So very timely. But generally, hormones actually do mix quite well, but there are a few caveats among that. So hormones are generally formulated, as I said earlier, as amine salts, and in turn, they don't mix too well with salt-based trace elements. So something like manganese sulfate would be perhaps a good example of that. So it would be an absolute no-no to do that. Newer formulations of trace elements that are available now, just to highlight one, the Yara range of products, which features on our tank mix compatibilities, they do mix very well. So there's always a way around these things. I did mention earlier that we'd also recently got a registration for a 2,4-D ester formulation. Now, the low volatile ester formulations, they actually they will mix with the likes of manganese sulfate, okay, and that's purely down to formulation. So another area to be, certainly to consider and be careful with is graminicides, which obviously it's going to be going on at a similar time of the season. Mecapro or Cmpp generally is okay with SU graminicides. You'd want to keep them under constant agitation. Mcpa and Dicamba. Dicamba actually, just for information, isn't exactly a phenoxy. It's in a similar sort of growth. Trying to think of the word that I'm wanting to use, but it's not a phenoxy herbicide. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, John. But yeah, so Mcpa and Dicamba is an absolute no-no, and you should leave at least 14 days between application of that and an SU graminicide. Others to mention on that strain is FOPs, DIMs and DENs. So similar restrictions to what we just mentioned. The typical advice that perhaps some of you will be familiar with is if you're going to be applying, for example, axial first, then you need to leave a 7-day interval between that and Mecapro. And 7 days between that and Mecapro. Mcpa or Dicamba, then if you're applying those first, then you probably want to leave 21 days. Okay, so it just shows the difference. If you're applying the Mecapro first, then you could get away with 14 days. So it's just a little bit to think about when you're applying it in sequence with graminicides. I think we're all quite used to having SUs. Some of the SUs do have these restrictions as well, so be aware. But SUs generally are perhaps a little bit more flexible. When it comes to sorry, Tom.
No, carry on, please.
Yeah, it's just something else to consider when you're looking at tank mixing is actually the health of the crop. If the crop is stressed due to environmental conditions, whether it be freezing cold or blazing hot, then you open yourself up to risk there as well. Herbicide, previous herbicides we just touched on, graminicides, they can de-wax the crop as well. So it's looking at all those little intricate details.
Right.
Frequently asked about mixing hormones with other herbicides to increase broadleaf weed activity, and people know that hormones, they do mix actually very well with broadleaf weed SUs. But as John mentioned a while ago, it's important to check that both parts of the mix are actually they have good efficacy on the given weed or weeds that you're trying to target, because otherwise you're going to put selection pressure on one particular active.
Yes, if I can just come in there, Dan,
yeah.
We've got a question that's come through from Mike Goddard about this. If mixing a phenoxy with an SU or Aralex, can rates be reduced by 50% or more or less?
Yeah, I know on the certainly on the Aralex literature that comes out, they suggest that sulfonylureas can be reduced or to half rate. I've done various trials around SUs in the past, and yeah, I'd be cautious of doing that. I think you need to take it on a case-by-case basis, quite frankly. You need to look at what weeds that you're targeting, and you need to make an educated decision from there on in. One of the other questions that did come in from trying to see where it was, Jamie Mcpa, I think it was. He was asking about
hormone
bean
and
control.
methyl.
Yeah, again, they do mix very well, but I would perhaps suggest, from the hormone part, something containing Mcpa. It would mix absolutely fine with metsulfuron, but I would perhaps consider something fluazulam based that has perhaps more activity on the beans. Obviously, you need to consider weather conditions, but we've seen good results with a product of ours called Paramount Max, which is a fluazulam tribenuron mixture. So a mixture of that plus some Mcpa or Mcpa containing product, you'll get good results.
Great. Just look, we've had quite a lot of questions on tank mixing, Dan, so we're going to stay with that for a while. But we've got someone, again, Richard Martin has come through with a question: can I mix Fox with Cmpp formulations?
Fox, we tend to, as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to Fox, we would...
Fox, that is, sorry, F-O-X.
Fox.
Yeah.
Right. I would suggest not, just due to the de-waxing from the bipenox. But
right.
Yeah, I can check that one.
If we can move on, we've also got a question from Nigel Sneath about Scorch. How can the risk of Scorch be reduced with multiple chemicals being used in one application?
Yeah, it's another interesting one, isn't it? And it comes down to considering what sort of what stage the crop is at. Has it had graminicides in there? You wouldn't be going on with a tank mix of the graminicides. It comes down to those intervals that we've just talked about. If it's had issues, then you wouldn't want to, well, if the crop has been de-waxed, then you wouldn't want to be going on with phenoxy herbicides. Having said that, the hormone products, they mix very well with fungicides and PGRs, and indeed insecticides, which can be quite harsh. We've done lots of trials over recent years with mixtures with these in, and all has been well, and no issues and no phyto. As I mentioned, there was this trial that we did a couple of years ago on poppy. We try to make the trials work that we do very practical, and it's all very well looking at the herbicide, but that's not what happens in a practical situation. So we try and push the products where we can, and again, no damage was seen.
Great. Dan, just finally, before we move off on this, I'm conscious that we've had a lot of questions about tank mixing. One question about sequencing. This is Gary Lander. So can he use phenoxies if he's using an SU for grassweed management in the spring?
Yeah, again, I did touch on it a little bit earlier, but Mcpa generally mixes well with sulfonylurea graminicide. So I'm presuming he's talking along the lines of perhaps Broadway Star and Atlantis type products. So you would want to use it under constant agitation. I mean, I think in a perfect world, personally, I would probably split the applications again. But if you absolutely must, then Mcpa you could do. Again, as I said, MCPA, Dicamba, you need to avoid that, and you need to leave a 14-day interval.
Great. Thank you very much for that. Right, we'll move on